On today's episode of Locked On Oilers, a preview of the matchup against the Tampa Bay Lightning, what the success is stemming from for the Edmonton Oilers, and the ghost of Oilers past. All that and much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Oilers podcast. I'm your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. As mentioned on today's episode, we're going to start off with a little bit of a preview between the Edmonton Oilers and the Tampa Bay Lightning as the Bolts come into town for a 7 o'clock puck drop. We'll preview that in just a second. But also on today's episode, why the Edmonton Oilers have found success recently. We went through the three keys that the Edmonton Oilers needed to have and go through against the Anaheim Ducks and the San Jose Sharks, and those three keys have continued throughout their 4-game win streak. What were they and how are they applying that? We'll talk about that a little later. And to wrap up today's episode, the ghost of Oilers past, and this one was traded for a fan favorite and then also became a fan favorite, a recent fan favorite as well, a guy who is a natural born leader and probably a captain of the team despite the fact Connor McDavid had the C on the chest. There is a little bit of a hint for you for the ghost of Oilers past. All that much more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers. Thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Where we are going to start off, as mentioned, is the Tampa Bay Lightning in town tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. The Tampa Bay Lightning are coming off a big 5-2 victory over the Vancouver Canucks just last night as Brian Elliott got the start in that game, and Steven Stamkos with a hat trick, scoring his 500th career goal in the NHL. What a player Steven Stamkos is. As he said afterwards in an interview with the Vancouver Canucks media, he mentioned that yes, it may not have been in Tampa Bay, but he would have preferred it to be in a Canadian market, as the fans gave him a standing ovation there, and the fans in Toronto when he scored his 60th goal that one year. He scored it against Toronto, and he said they also gave him a standing ovation for one of the best players of this past generation. I saw on Daily Faceoff saying that Steven Stamkos is Steve Yzerman 2.0. So, hey, Steve Yzerman 2.0 coming to Rogers Place tonight to face a very hot Edmonton Oilers team. And they're going to go with the same lineup that they deployed against the Seattle Kraken just Tuesday night. Let's go through it, though, because they do have a couple of line changes potentially heading into this game, as Evander Kane will be elevated to the top line for the Edmonton Oilers, skating alongside Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Klim Kostin, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Matthias Janmark are the second line, as Warren Foegele, Ryan McLeod, and Zach Hyman become the third line for the Edmonton Oilers. Dylan Holloway and Derek Ryan will make up the 4.5 line, or 3.5 line, I guess, for the Edmonton Oilers, as Jesse Puljujarvi, the second straight game where he is a healthy scratch for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Oilers D-core, with Puljujarvi being a healthy scratch, as mentioned, the Oilers will go with an 11-7, and Darnell Nurse will line up alongside Cody Ceci, Brett Kulak with Tyson Barrie, Philip Broberg alongside Evan Bouchard, the fantastic pairing for the Edmonton Oilers so far these last couple of games, and Vincent Desharnais will get another game for the Edmonton Oilers. Jack Campbell getting the start tonight against the almost called them the Vegas Golden Knights, the Tampa Bay Lightning. That is, as he looks for another win in his 5th straight start for the Edmonton Oilers, his 6th straight appearance since that, coming in relief for Stuart Skinner against the LA Kings. Now on the flip side, now also just before we go to the Tampa Bay Lightning, something to remember is that these were the lines at practice yesterday, and it was a little bit of a light skate yesterday as well. So these are kind of lines to be played with, let's just say that. I'm sure Zach Hyman will not spend a majority of the game with Warren Foegele and Ryan McLeod, and I'm sure we will see Draisaitl and Kane and McDavid and Hyman and Nugent-Hopkins all rattled around at some point in this game, so something to be aware of heading into puck drop tonight. Now on the flip side, the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are having a very solid season so far this year, 29-13-1 on the year. They are third right now in the Atlantic Division, fighting for that second spot really with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but it's just trivial at this point, basically for home ice advantage in the playoffs for their inevitable first round fight there. That's going to be a fun one, isn't it? But tonight, the Tampa Bay Lightning are deploying Brandon Hagel alongside Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. Anthony Cirelli's on the second line alongside Steven Stamkos and Alex Killorn. Ross Colton alongside Nick Paul and Pat Maroon. And Vladislav Nemestikov on the fourth line for the Bolts with Pierre-Edouard Bellemare and Corey Perry. Now, Bellemare and Derek Ryan are the only two players, active NHLers, to have started their career at 29 while playing more than 400 games after the age of 29. That is very impressive. A couple of men who aged like fine wine. That's what we're talking about there. The back end for the Bolts goes like this. Victor Hedman is alongside Zach Bogosian on the top pairing. Ian Cole alongside Eric Chernak, and Mikhail Sergachev on the third pairing with Cal Foote. As mentioned, Brian Elliott started the game last night for the Lightning against the Canucks. Andrei Vasilevsky will get the start for the Bolts against the Oilers tonight. Now, the last time these two teams played, you'll probably remember on November 8th, Evander Kane suffered that horrific injury as Pat Maroon did skate over and unfortunately step on and sever Evander Kane's wrist. It will be Evander Kane's second game back since that horrific injury and happens to be against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But in that game, the Edmonton Oilers would go on to win 3-2 in that one, as Warren Foegele getting a goal with Ryan McLeod getting the assist. That was kind of the start of the season where the Oilers were getting depth scoring. Then they started to go on a little bit of a lull, surprisingly, after this game. But Connor McDavid also getting a goal in that one with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Tyson Barrie getting the assist on that goal, and the game winner for the Edmonton Oilers, Leon Draisaitl from Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman. Jack Campbell in that game had a very solid game, one of his best games as an Edmonton Oiler. He stopped 35 that were shot towards him, had a .946 save percentage for the Oilers in that one. The Edmonton Oilers are looking to get a similar output for the Edmonton Oilers, or out of Jack Campbell, in this one. And he is riding quite the hot streak. So much so that he's helped the Edmonton Oilers in their massive 4-game win streak that has helped them get back into the fight for the top of the division. And again, a lot of thanks to Jack Campbell. But why? What else goes around the Edmonton Oilers 4-game win streak? Well, we will talk about that in just a second. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college basketball to the NBA to even soccer. Yes, I'm talking soccer, and I'm talking soccer because somebody may have cashed out on $25 for a halftime bet on Manchester City. Yes, I'm a Man United fan, but you got to chase the sauce when the sauce is there. Either way, if you love sports podcasts, which if you love this one, you probably do anyways, you can find those at BetOnline as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Where we are going to continue now with today's episode is how the Edmonton Oilers are continuing their success on, not necessarily this trip, I guess, because they've had a little bit of a 2-game homestand here, but they have been on a roll over the last 4 games. But why? What has happened? What has been the mentality change for the Edmonton Oilers, and what have they done on the ice to deserve this success? Well, if you may remember this time last week, in fact, a little earlier, before the Anaheim Ducks game, we went through 3 keys for the Edmonton Oilers to have success, not only against the Anaheim Ducks, but the San Jose Sharks. And the Edmonton Oilers did that. The Edmonton Oilers didn't only do that in those 2 games, they continued those 3 keys against the Vegas Golden Knights and against the Seattle Kraken, and the Edmonton Oilers are on a 4-game heater. So what were those 3 keys, and how have the Edmonton Oilers deployed those 3 keys? Well, the first key for the Edmonton Oilers was to score first. Scoring first has been massive for the Edmonton Oilers, as that has allowed them to get into their rhythm early, play their game, and not have to play from behind. And the Edmonton Oilers have done that in 3 out of the 4 games that they have won over the last 4 games. And the one game that they didn't do that, the Seattle Kraken, the Edmonton Oilers ended the first period tied 1-1 and would go on to win the game 5-2. So maybe scoring first isn't necessarily the number one thing, but it is important for the Edmonton Oilers and to go into that break with either A, the lead, or B, a tie. That means for the next 40 minutes, it's a brand new game. You can go out there and play the game you want to. And the Edmonton Oilers have been able to do that. Now, as mentioned, against Seattle, they didn't score the first goal, but they did go into the break tied. But they did get the first goal against the Vegas Golden Knights. In fact, they got the first 2 goals less than a minute apart. Matthias Janmark scored the first goal of the game only 45 seconds in, former Vegas Golden Knight. And then Leon Draisaitl scored the second goal, putting it basically away for the Edmonton Oilers at 1 minute and 42 seconds into the game. 57 seconds, between each other. And the Edmonton Oilers put the game away early. That was important. Then against San Jose, Connor McDavid getting the first goal of the game in that one. And against Anaheim, Dylan Holloway, who was elevated in that game as well, playing on the first line for a little bit in that first period. The Edmonton Oilers went on to win the game there. The second key for the Edmonton Oilers was to keep the pedal to the metal, and that is exactly what the Edmonton Oilers have done, and may be the most important step of these 3 keys, as the Edmonton Oilers have had 2-goal leads, at least 2-goal leads, in each of the last 4 games. The Edmonton Oilers had a 3-goal lead against the Seattle Kraken. In fact, they won 5-2 by those 3 goals and scored 3 unanswered against the Kraken to put that game away for the Edmonton Oilers. Against the Vegas Golden Knights, that ended 4-3. The Edmonton Oilers had a 3-1 score, or 3-1 lead, I should say, for the Edmonton Oilers. Against the San Jose Sharks, a pretty easy game, but a 7-0 lead for the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers would go on to win that one 7-1. Connor McDavid, Klim Kostin, Connor McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, Jesse Puljujärvi, and Ryan McLeod all getting goals in that one. Not only Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, but you're seeing goals from Ryan McLeod. You saw goals from Derek Ryan in last game against the Seattle Kraken, Klim Kostin, Jesse Puljujärvi. That's very important. And plus, in the Edmonton Oilers, again, they didn't put the game away until the second period, where they scored 3 goals in the second period and then scored 2 goals in the first and 2 goals in the third. The Edmonton Oilers really put the pedal to the metal and kept it going through the entire game. That is what you love to see. And then against Anaheim, a 6-1 lead for the Edmonton Oilers. They'd go on to win 6-2. 4 goals in the first period and goals from Dylan Holloway, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Connor McDavid, Klim Kostin twice, Darnell Nurse, and Leon Draisaitl, Those were the 6 goal scorers for the Edmonton Oilers. Well, 5 because Kostin got 2. But That is what you love to see. The Edmonton Oilers creating distance. So if they do end up crumbling in some way, they're able to have a little bit of a cushion. And that is how the Edmonton Oilers have won games down this stretch. And the third and final key for the Edmonton Oilers over this past 4 games has been Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell has found the form that everybody expected Jack Campbell to find. Against Seattle last game, 29 saves on 31 shots, a save percentage of .935. Against Vegas, 27 saves on 30 shots, a .900 save percentage. 25 saves on 26 shots against the San Jose Sharks, a .962 save percentage, and a .913 save percentage against the Anaheim Ducks, 21 saves on 23 shots. All told, 102 saves on 110 shots, a .927 save percentage over the last 4 games for Jack Campbell. That is where the Edmonton Oilers are also winning games. The defensive play and the play of Jack Campbell. The Edmonton Oilers were able to bring up a guy in Vincent Desharnais where you hear nothing but positive things from the Edmonton Oilers around Vincent Desharnais. He has also been very communicative in the Edmonton Oilers zone, which helps not only the Edmonton Oilers, but Jack Campbell as well. Knowing what's going on, having an extra set of eyes is very important, and the Edmonton Oilers are deploying the defense in a very solid way. In fact, since the Anaheim game, the Edmonton Oilers have gone 11-7 in each of those games, giving Jack Campbell a little more support in his own end, the Edmonton Oilers themselves some more support in their own end, but also able to deploy Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl even more. Good coaching, good defensive play, great goaltending, and that is how the Edmonton Oilers have won their last 4 games. They need to continue it on this next stretch, as the next 8 games for the Edmonton Oilers are relatively easy. Each of the next 8 games, the Oilers are playing a team from basically 24th and 32nd in the NHL. So the Oilers need to get a big game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, to go into that little bit of a run against easy teams with a little bit of momentum. Now, yes, of course, they do have momentum either way, but getting a win against a good team, against like the Tampa Bay Lightning, is even better. So the 3 keys to the Edmonton Oilers' 4-game win streak recently: scoring the first goal is the first thing, as the Edmonton Oilers have scored the first goal in 3 of the last 4 games. The second thing, putting the pedal to the metal, growing the lead and having at least 2 goal leads in each of the last 4 games has helped the Edmonton Oilers go away and come away with a massive victory. And Jack Campbell having at least a .900 save percentage in each of the last 4 games for the Edmonton Oilers. That is a winning recipe. There you go. Let's wrap up today's episode with a little bit of Ghost of Edmonton Oilers talk. Now, as mentioned, this guy was a fan favorite and absolutely gritty forward, to put all gritty forwards to their place, as this Ghost sadly left the Edmonton Oilers once the Edmonton Oilers were making the playoffs, the exact type of player the Edmonton Oilers needed in the playoffs, but he set the tone for the next generation of Edmonton Oilers. Who is that, and why was he so important? We will talk about that in just a second, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? I understand, but you gotta try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal personally is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me and want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, I've got the thing for you. You gotta try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they are so delicious you won't think that they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolutions. Plus, what makes Built so good? They are built with 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie. Oh, that peanut butter brownie. I'm also a big churro guy. You can't get me away from churros. Those are the best. But they got peanut butter brownie and coconut almond. Oh my goodness, is it good? I'm not sure how Bill does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar, all while maintaining amazing macros. And it's even better than they are healthy. They are better than they are healthy. Yes, they taste better than how healthy they are for you. It's only 130 grams and 130 calories, and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Yes, 17 grams of protein. You can get all of that and amazing taste covered in 100% real chocolate with Built Bar. Alrighty, let's wrap up today's episode with the Ghost of Oilers Past. And this ghost, as mentioned, became a Edmonton Oilers favorite, an Edmonton Oiler fan favorite, as this guy would go on to play 214 games for the Edmonton Oilers, not always being a healthy player, or at least a healthy scratch for the Edmonton Oilers sometimes. But when he was in the lineup and around the Edmonton Oilers had a different mentality. And this started when the Edmonton Oilers traded Devan Dubnyk on January 15th, 2014 to the Nashville Predators for a player that they had just signed that season for a little bit of money, and that was Matt Hendricks. Matt Hendricks was underperforming on his new contract, and Nashville said, well, sounds good. We're going to ship you off for Devan Dubnyk, who started his career more or less with the Nashville Predators, became one of the better goalies in the league, went to Minnesota as well. But the Edmonton Oilers got the type of player that they were missing for a very long time. Matt Hendricks, as mentioned, 214 games played for the Edmonton Oilers, 20 goals, 18 assists, 38 points, came in a very difficult time for the Edmonton Oilers, as the following year, the Edmonton Oilers would select Connor McDavid first overall, and he would be kind of the leader for Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers in the locker room, more specifically, a great personable person and a great veteran of the game. Now, as mentioned, he was an Edmonton Oiler from 2014 to 2017, and in his final year as an Edmonton Oiler in 2017, the Edmonton Oilers were making the playoffs. You remember that massive series against the San Jose Sharks, the heartbreaking loss against the Anaheim Ducks. And now Matt Hendricks didn't get into a lot of games in the playoffs. In fact, I don't think he got into any as an Edmonton Oiler, but he took warm-ups in each and every single playoff game for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Brett, why is that important? Why is that something you'd mention? Because for a player who wasn't going to play in the game, he knew he wasn't going to play in the game. It wasn't a matter of getting ready for the game for Matt Hendricks. It was a matter of getting in the right mentality for the Edmonton Oilers. Matt Hendricks was a leader for the Edmonton Oilers and was a leader in that locker room. Yes, in 2016, the Edmonton Oilers named Connor McDavid the captain, but honestly, it was Matt Hendricks. Matt Hendricks led that locker room, and honestly, if you ask Connor McDavid, I'm sure he looked to Matt Hendricks for more things than you would honestly expect. No, Matt Hendricks isn't a Stanley Cup winner. Was he on that? No, he wasn't. He was an Edmonton Oiler. I had to make sure he wasn't with the Capitals that year. But no, he wasn't a Stanley Cup winner. No, he wasn't an out-and-out star in the NHL. He wasn't a goal scorer or a playmaker. He was just a gritty forward. But he was a gritty forward who had been through it all in the NHL. And the Edmonton Oilers didn't have that on their team yet. They went out and acquired Zach Kassian later on, I believe in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. He would kind of start to become the emotional-ish leader for the Edmonton Oilers, but there was no one quite like Matt Hendricks. And in the summer of 2017, the Edmonton Oilers would lose Matt Hendricks as he would sign a deal with the Winnipeg Jets on a league minimum deal. He would then go on to play with the Minnesota Wild, also signing a league minimum deal. At the trade deadline that year, he was sent back to Winnipeg, played 4 games for the Jets, and would call it a career for Matt Hendricks. Only 2 seasons removed, from leaving the Edmonton Oilers in 2017. Now, his best year for the Edmonton Oilers came in 2014-2015, where he would score 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points, had 71 games under his belt in that season, and 76 penalty minutes. Now, that wasn't his highest career total for the Edmonton Oilers, as he would get 82 penalty minutes in 2015-2016, the following year, of course. And as mentioned, he would go on to be an Edmonton Oiler from 2014 to 2017, 4 seasons as an Edmonton Oiler. As mentioned, he would retire in 2019 as a Winnipeg Jet after playing 4 games with them. All told with the Winnipeg Jets, though, 64 games with the Winnipeg Jets, 5 goals, 9 assists, 14 points, and then 22 games with the Minnesota Wild, no goals, 2 assists, 2 points. He is now the Assistant Director of Player Development at the Minnesota Wild, or for the Minnesota Wild. He started in 2019-2020 and is still in that position. And honestly, with all of those things that I mentioned, why he was a leader for the Edmonton Oilers and why he was so important to the Edmonton Oilers locker room, and honestly, he's a presence the Edmonton Oilers haven't been able to fill since his absence. If you take away Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, really, if you take away Connor McDavid, who would you put the captaincy on? Who would be your leader for the Edmonton Oilers? I can hear many of you saying Ryan Nugent-Hopkins right now, and that is basically based on merit, is it not? It's based on the fact that he's been the longest tenured Edmonton Oiler and the fact that he's put up with the Edmonton Oilers for so long. If it wasn't for that, Klim Kostin. I mean, the Edmonton Oilers have not been able to fill the presence that Matt Hendricks left for the Edmonton Oilers, and the absence, really, that he's left the Edmonton Oilers. And it's really a shame because his commandment of the Edmonton Oilers and his presence was really something that a lot of people felt. So, as mentioned, I think his position now is very fitting, and you see players like Sam Steele, who's fitting in just perfectly fine in Minnesota. You see a lot of new players, Matt Boldy as well, coming into the Minnesota Wild and having very successful careers already. And I'm sure they can attribute Matt Hendricks to that a little bit. In the Minnesota Wild organization, wishing he was still in the Oilers. Either way, let's wrap it up there. As mentioned, the Edmonton Oilers and the Tampa Bay Lightning face off tonight. 7 o'clock puck drop at Rogers Place. I can't wait for it. Let's wrap it up there, everybody. Hopefully at the end of the game, we can play La Bamba, baby.